Imagine discovering a letter penned by Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor who played a crucial role in the trial and crucifixion of Jesus Christ. The mere existence of such a document would already be groundbreaking, but the contents go far beyond mere historical narration. Addressed to Emperor Tiberius, this letter recounts a story that intertwines faith, politics, and the supernatural. Pilate, a figure often vilified in religious texts, reveals his personal perspective on the events that took place in Jerusalem, a city simmering with tension and expectation. The letter begins with Pilate describing Jesus Christ, not as a criminal or rebel, but as a man of unmatched virtue and presence. His physical features are detailed in a way rarely found in ancient texts. His commanding stature, his hair likened to chestnut in color, and his piercing eyes that seem to reach into the soul. Pilate's admiration for Jesus' demeanor is palpable. He recalls a man who spoke with an authority that transcended earthly power, whose words carried wisdom and a sense of divine purpose. But the letter doesn't stop at admiration. It delves into the political pressures Pilate faced as governor of Judea. The mounting tension between the Jewish leaders and the Roman administration forced Pilate into a corner. Though he sought to release Jesus, offering the crowd a choice between him and the criminal Barabbas, the people demanded Jesus' crucifixion. The act of washing his hands, as Pilate describes it, was more than a gesture. It was a symbolic attempt to distance himself from a decision he deeply regretted. Yet the most astonishing part of the letter lies in what follows. Pilate writes of rumors that began spreading shortly after the crucifixion, rumors of Jesus' resurrection. He details the reports of an empty tomb, sightings of Jesus among his followers, and the profound impact these events had on Jerusalem. Pilate admits that these occurrences left him questioning the very nature of the man he had condemned. Could Jesus have been more than just a prophet or teacher? This letter is not just a relic of history, but a testimony to the enduring impact of Jesus Christ. It bridges the gap between the spiritual and the historical, offering a perspective from an unlikely source. A Roman governor who found himself at the center of a divine mystery. As we unravel the contents of this letter, prepare to be transported back to a moment in time when history and eternity intersected. The letter begins with Pontius Pilate addressing Emperor Tiberius in a formal tone, recounting the appearance of a man who defied all expectations, a man named Jesus Christ. Pilate describes the immediate impact Jesus had upon arriving in Jerusalem, a city already tense with political unrest and religious fervor. According to Pilate, Jesus was not an ordinary man. His presence commanded respect, his demeanor exuded peace, and his teachings resonated deeply with people from all walks of life. Pilate recalls that Jesus was widely recognized as a prophet, though his followers went further, declaring him the Son of God. They attributed miraculous powers to him, healing the sick, raising the dead, and performing acts that defied natural laws. These claims caused both awe and controversy. For Pilate, a governor accustomed to dealing with insurrections and political scheming, Jesus was a unique figure, unlike any rebel or preacher he had encountered. The governor's initial observations focused on Jesus' physical appearance. Pilate provides an unusually detailed description, a tall man with an imposing yet approachable presence. His hair, chestnut in color, fell gracefully to his shoulders, parted in a way that was culturally distinct. His beard, thick and matching the tone of his hair, added to his dignified appearance. Pilate notes that Jesus' complexion was flawless, his forehead smooth, and his skin bore a slight blush, as if untouched by the harshness of life. What struck Pilate most, however, were Jesus' eyes, gray, clear, and luminous. Pilate writes that these eyes seemed to penetrate the soul of anyone who met his gaze, conveying wisdom, compassion, and an unshakable confidence. These were not the eyes of a mere mortal. They seemed to hold ancient truths and an understanding that went beyond human comprehension. Despite Jesus' peaceful demeanor, Pilate observed that his presence sparked envy among the religious leaders of Jerusalem. They viewed him as a threat to their authority and a disruptor of established traditions. Pilate describes their increasing hostility toward Jesus, fueled by his growing popularity and the transformative power of his teachings. It was this envy, Pilate suggests, that set the stage for the events that would follow. Pilate's account of his first encounter with Jesus reveals a man who embodied contradictions. He was both revered and despised, both gentle and commanding. Pilate confesses that he was intrigued by Jesus, even as he struggled to reconcile his admiration with the political pressures mounting around him. Little did he know, this man would soon become the central figure in a story that would forever alter the course of history. As Pilate's letter continues, he shifts his focus to the escalating tension in Jerusalem during Jesus' ministry. The city, already a melting pot of religious fervor and political unrest, became a focal point of division as news of Jesus' miracles and teaching spread. Pilate observed how Jesus captivated large crowds, many of whom began to see him as a beacon of hope and a fulfillment of ancient prophecies. Yet this very adoration became the source of growing conflict among the religious authorities. Pilate describes the increasing pressure he faced from the Sanhedrin, the Jewish council, which demanded that he take action against Jesus. They accused him of blasphemy, claiming that his teachings threatened the sanctity of their traditions. Pilate, however, saw no basis for their accusations. He considered Jesus to be a man of peace, whose words inspired reconciliation rather than rebellion. Still, the demands for intervention grew louder, forcing Pilate to navigate the treacherous waters of politics and faith. In this part of the letter, Pilate delves into his personal observations of Jesus' character. He recounts how Jesus carried himself with unwavering composure, even in the face of relentless opposition. Pilate was struck by his ability to remain calm under scrutiny, answering questions with profound wisdom and clarity. Pilate recalls a particular moment when he questioned Jesus about his identity. "I am a king," Jesus replied, "but my kingdom is not of this world." These words lingered in Pilate's mind, leaving him to ponder their deeper meaning. Despite Pilate's growing respect for Jesus, the political situation in Jerusalem left him with little room to maneuver. The religious leaders were relentless, accusing Pilate of undermining Roman authority by allowing Jesus to continue his ministry. They threatened to report his inaction to Emperor Tiberius, a move that could jeopardize Pilate's position as governor. These threats, combined with the volatile atmosphere in the city, created a sense of urgency that Pilate could not ignore. Pilate reflects on the choices before him. On one hand, he recognized Jesus as an innocent man, a teacher whose message transcended the petty grievances of his accusers. On the other, he faced the possibility of an uprising if he failed to address the demands of the Sanhedrin. The weight of this decision began to take its toll, leaving Pilate caught between his sense of justice and his duty to maintain order. As the letter progresses, Pilate's internal conflict becomes more apparent. He acknowledges that his role as governor required him to make difficult decisions, but the case of Jesus was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Pilate hints at an uneasy premonition, a sense that the events unfolding in Jerusalem were part of a larger narrative, one that would leave an indelible mark on history. The trial of Jesus, as described by Pilate, was a moment of profound tension and moral conflict. The letter reveals how the pressure from the Jewish leaders and the growing unrest among the people left Pilate with few options. Though Pilate believed in Jesus' innocence, the cries for his condemnation grew louder, culminating in a trial that would forever be etched in history. Pilate recounts how Jesus was brought before him, accused of blasphemy and claims of kingship that allegedly threatened Roman authority. Pilate, however, saw no evidence to justify such charges. He describes Jesus' demeanor during the trial as calm and resolute, a stark contrast to the hostility of the crowd and the fervor of the religious leaders. "Are you the king of the Jews?" Pilate asked. Jesus' response was enigmatic yet profound. "You say that I am. For this reason, I was born and came into the world, to testify to the truth." Pilate writes of his struggle to interpret these words. They carried a weight that went beyond earthly concerns, leaving him with an impression of Jesus as a man of extraordinary conviction. Yet despite Pilate's respect for Jesus, the trial was not simply a matter of justice. The mounting political pressure forced Pilate to consider the potential consequences of releasing him. In an attempt to appease the crowd and avoid condemning an innocent man, Pilate offered them a choice: to release Jesus or Barabbas, a known criminal. Pilate believed the crowd would choose to free Jesus, whose popularity had been evident in the days leading up to the trial. To his dismay, the people demanded Barabbas's release and called for Jesus to be crucified. Pilate describes this moment as one of deep despair, realizing that the crowd's decision was driven by manipulation and envy rather than justice. Feeling cornered, Pilate performed the symbolic act of washing his hands before the crowd, declaring, "I am innocent of this man's blood. The responsibility is yours." Despite this public display, Pilate confesses in the letter that the act brought him little solace. He knew that the decision to condemn Jesus would weigh heavily on his conscience. Pilate's account of the trial also touches on his personal impressions of Jesus. He writes that Jesus' unwavering composure and profound statements left an indelible mark on him. Pilate sensed that he was in the presence of someone extraordinary, someone whose mission transcended the political and religious turmoil of the time. As Pilate handed down the order for crucifixion, he describes a sense of foreboding that lingered in the air. The trial, he writes, was not merely a legal proceeding, but a moment of cosmic significance. Though Pilate fulfilled his duty as governor, he could not shake the feeling that he had played a role in a narrative far greater than himself, a narrative that would echo through the ages. Pilate's letter transitions into a vivid account of the crucifixion of Jesus, a moment he describes as both harrowing and extraordinary. The governor, torn between his sense of duty and a haunting awareness of the injustice unfolding, recounts how the events of that day left an indelible mark on his soul. Pilate describes the procession leading to Golgotha, the site of the crucifixion, as one of profound sorrow. The streets were lined with people, some weeping, others jeering, as Jesus carried his cross. Pilate watched from a distance, observing how Jesus bore the weight of the cross and the ridicule of the crowd with a dignity that defied comprehension. His silence, Pilate notes, spoke louder than any words, reflecting a strength that seemed almost otherworldly. As Jesus was nailed to the cross, Pilate writes of a series of extraordinary events that unfolded. He recalls how the sky darkened in the middle of the day, an ominous sign that filled the city with dread. The sun seemed to vanish, replaced by an eerie darkness, and stars appeared as if it were night. Pilate describes the fear that gripped the population, with many interpreting these signs as divine displeasure. The letter details the moments leading up to Jesus' final breath. Pilate recounts how Jesus, even in agony, displayed a compassion that moved many to tears. According to the account, Jesus' words from the cross, asking forgiveness for his persecutors, left a profound impression on those present. Pilate writes that this act of forgiveness, in the face of such suffering, was unlike anything he had ever witnessed. Then came the moment of Jesus' death. Pilate describes how the earth trembled, shaking buildings and causing panic among the people. He writes of reports that tombs were opened and the dead were seen walking among the living. These events, coupled with the darkness that enveloped the city, led many to believe that Jesus' crucifixion was not an ordinary execution, but an event of cosmic significance. Pilate reflects on the symbolic act of washing his hands before the crucifixion. Though it was meant to absolve him of guilt, he admits that it did little to ease his conscience. Watching the events unfold, he felt an overwhelming sense of regret and helplessness. The weight of his decision, compounded by the supernatural occurrences, left him questioning the very nature of the man he had condemned. As the crucifixion came to an end, Pilate was left with a lingering sense of unease. He writes that the memory of Jesus' gaze, his calm demeanor, and his words of forgiveness would haunt him for the rest of his life. The events of that day, Pilate concludes, were not merely a tragedy, but a turning point, a moment when the course of history was forever changed. As Pilate's letter unfolds, he turns to the aftermath of Jesus' crucifixion, where the atmosphere in Jerusalem became charged with mystery and speculation. Pilate recounts how, just days after the execution, rumors began to circulate about Jesus' resurrection. These rumors spread rapidly, reaching Pilate's ears and leaving him both intrigued and unsettled. Pilate describes how reports emerged of Jesus' followers claiming to have seen him alive. Some spoke of encounters with Jesus in unexpected places, while others reported that he had appeared to groups of disciples, speaking words of encouragement and prophecy. These accounts were met with a mix of skepticism and awe, but they were impossible to ignore. To address the growing rumors, Pilate ordered Roman soldiers to investigate Jesus' tomb. The soldiers tasked with securing the site returned with a report that left Pilate in disbelief. The massive stone that had sealed the tomb had been moved, and the tomb itself was empty. There was no sign of Jesus' body, and no explanation for how the stone could have been displaced. The letter delves into Pilate's reaction to this discovery. While he remained skeptical of the resurrection claims, he could not dismiss the strange circumstances surrounding the empty tomb. Pilate admits that he felt a mixture of fear and curiosity, as these events defied the logic and order he was accustomed to as a Roman governor. Pilate also describes the reaction of the religious leaders to the rumors. They were deeply troubled by the reports of the empty tomb and sought to suppress the story, fearing it would incite further unrest. Pilate notes that they even accused Jesus' disciples of stealing his body to fabricate the resurrection narrative. However, Pilate found no evidence to support this theory, further deepening the mystery. In his letter, Pilate reflects on the profound implications of the resurrection rumors. He writes that the mere possibility of Jesus rising from the dead challenged everything he believed about life and death, power and divinity. Pilate began to see Jesus not just as a man, but as a figure whose influence extended beyond the natural world. The governor confesses that these events left him questioning his role in the crucifixion. Could he have condemned someone who was, in fact, divine? Pilate describes the weight of this question as unbearable, a burden that would stay with him long after his time in Jerusalem. Pilate concludes this section by acknowledging that the story of Jesus' resurrection was spreading far beyond Jerusalem. It was no longer a local rumor, but a narrative that was gaining momentum, destined to shape the beliefs and lives of countless people. For Pilate, the empty tomb was not just a mystery, but a turning point. A moment that marked the beginning of a movement he could neither control nor fully understand. In this section of the letter, Pilate reflects on Jesus' singular presence and the profound impression he left on all who encountered him. Pilate's words reveal not only his admiration, but also his growing realization that Jesus was far more than an ordinary man. His descriptions paint a vivid picture of a figure whose physical appearance and spiritual essence were unlike anything Pilate had ever experienced. Pilate describes Jesus as a man of exceptional grace and dignity. His tall stature and serene demeanor commanded attention without any effort. Pilate recalls how Jesus' features, his chestnut-colored hair, his flawless complexion, and his piercing gray eyes, conveyed a beauty that was both physical and spiritual. His beard, slightly parted and matching the tone of his hair, added to the impression of wisdom and nobility. What struck Pilate most, however, was not Jesus' physical appearance, but his demeanor. Pilate recounts how Jesus moved and spoke with an authority that seemed to come from another realm. His words carried a calm confidence, and his gaze had the power to silence even the most hostile accusers. Pilate writes that being in Jesus' presence felt like standing before a force that transcended the natural world, a presence that inspired both reverence and peace. Pilate also reflects on Jesus' unique ability to connect with people on a profound level. He describes how Jesus' eyes seemed to see into the depths of a person's soul, revealing truths that even the individual might not fully understand. Pilate writes that Jesus' gaze carried both compassion and conviction, a combination that left an indelible mark on everyone who met him. Pilate recounts a moment when he observed Jesus addressing a crowd. Though his words were gentle, they carried a power that held everyone in rapt attention. Pilate describes the scene as mesmerizing, with Jesus radiating a peace that seemed almost otherworldly. Pilate admits that he was tempted to approach Jesus and speak with him personally, but circumstances prevented him from doing so. The letter also touches on the reactions of others to Jesus' presence. Pilate notes that while many admired and revered him, others were deeply threatened by his influence. The religious leaders in particular viewed Jesus as a challenge to their authority and a disruptor of their traditions. Pilate reflects on the irony of their fear, as Jesus' teachings seemed to promote peace and reconciliation rather than rebellion. Pilate concludes this section by acknowledging that Jesus' presence left him questioning his own beliefs and values. He writes that Jesus was not just a man of extraordinary wisdom and grace, but someone who embodied a higher truth. For Pilate, encountering Jesus was a transformative experience, one that reshaped his understanding of power, justice, and divinity. As Pilate's letter progresses, He reveals the deep inner turmoil he experienced in the wake of Jesus' trial and crucifixion. The events left him grappling with profound questions about justice, morality, and his role in what he increasingly saw as a moment of cosmic significance. Pilate begins this section by reflecting on the political pressures that led to his decision to condemn Jesus. He admits that his position as governor often required him to make difficult choices to maintain peace in a volatile region. However, the case of Jesus was unlike any other he had encountered. Pilate saw no fault in Jesus and believed him to be innocent of the charges brought against him. Yet the demands of the religious leaders and the growing unrest among the populace left Pilate feeling trapped. In his letter, Pilate describes the weight of the decision he ultimately made. He recounts how he offered the crowd a choice between Jesus and Barabbas, hoping they would choose to release the man he considered innocent. When the crowd instead demanded Barabbas' release, Pilate realized the extent of the manipulation and envy driving their decision. Despite his attempts to absolve himself of responsibility by washing his hands, Pilate confesses that he knew this act would not erase his guilt. Pilate delves into his personal reflections on justice and the role of a ruler. He writes that his position required him to balance the demands of the Roman Empire with the needs of the people he governed. However, in the case of Jesus, Pilate felt that justice had been sacrificed for the sake of political expediency. He describes the profound regret he felt in condemning a man who embodied truth and integrity, even as he faced overwhelming pressure to do so. The letter also explores Pilate's growing awareness of the deeper implications of Jesus' life and death. Pilate writes that Jesus' teachings and actions challenged the very foundations of power and authority. His declaration that his kingdom was not of this world left Pilate questioning the nature of true power. Pilate admits that, in Jesus, he saw a figure who transcended the political and religious structures of his time, a man whose influence would endure long after the Roman Empire. Pilate concludes this section with a reflection on the lasting impact of Jesus' presence. He writes that, despite his efforts to maintain order and fulfill his duties, he was left with a profound sense of loss. Pilate confesses that he could not shake the feeling that he had participated in an event that was far greater than himself, a moment that would echo through history and reshape the world. In the final portion of Pilate's letter, the governor reflects on the lasting legacy of Jesus and the profound impact of the events in Jerusalem. Pilate acknowledges that his brief encounters with Jesus, coupled with the extraordinary occurrences surrounding his death and resurrection, left an indelible mark not only on his life, but also on the city and its people. Pilate begins by describing the aftermath of Jesus' crucifixion. The city, once bustling with activity, seemed cloaked in a strange melancholy. Rumors of Jesus' resurrection continued to spread, with many claiming to have seen him alive. Pilate notes that these reports were impossible to dismiss, as they came from a variety of sources, including people with no apparent connection to his disciples. The empty tomb remained a central mystery. Pilate recounts how he ordered further investigations, but received no satisfactory explanation for what had occurred. The soldiers stationed at the tomb insisted that the stone had been moved without human intervention, and Jesus' body was nowhere to be found. Pilate admits that this mystery deepened his sense of unease, as it defied all logic and understanding. In reflecting on Jesus' legacy, Pilate writes of the transformation he witnessed in those who followed him. The fear and despair that had gripped Jesus' disciples after the crucifixion gave way to a renewed sense of purpose and conviction. Pilate observed how these men and women, once scattered and afraid, began to boldly proclaim Jesus' teachings, even in the face of persecution. Pilate also contemplates the broader implications of Jesus' life and message. He writes that Jesus' emphasis on love, forgiveness, and humility stood in stark contrast to the power struggles and violence that defined the world of Rome. Pilate admits that these teachings resonated with him on a personal level, challenging his own understanding of leadership and authority. As the letter draws to a close, Pilate reflects on his own role in the events surrounding Jesus' death. He confesses that the decision to condemn Jesus haunts him, not only as a failure of justice, but as a moment of profound moral reckoning. Pilate writes that he feels both guilt and awe, recognizing that he had encountered someone whose significance transcended human history. In his final words to Emperor Tiberius, Pilate expresses a sense of inevitability about Jesus' legacy. He writes that the story of Jesus would not fade, but would grow in power and influence, shaping the lives of countless people. Pilate concludes by suggesting that the events in Jerusalem were not merely political or religious, but part of a divine narrative, one that even the mighty Roman Empire could not control. Pilate ends the letter with a personal confession. Though he acted as a governor, bound by duty, he could not deny that his life had been forever changed by his encounter with Jesus. As we step back and reflect on Pilate's account, it becomes evident that the letter is not merely a historical document, but a window into the profound impact Jesus had on those who encountered him. Pilate's testimony, written from the perspective of a man often portrayed as a reluctant participant in history, offers us a rare and deeply human insight into the events that unfolded in Jerusalem. Pilate's narrative reveals a man torn between his responsibilities as a Roman governor and his conscience as a witness to something extraordinary. His descriptions of Jesus, his physical presence, his wisdom, and his unshakable composure paint a picture of a figure who transcended the ordinary constraints of power and authority. For Pilate, Jesus was not just a prophet or a teacher, but a man whose essence defied explanation, challenging the very foundations of human understanding. The supernatural events surrounding Jesus' crucifixion, including the darkened skies, the trembling earth, and the rumors of resurrection, forced Pilate to confront realities beyond his control. These occurrences left an indelible mark on his soul, leading him to question the nature of justice, power, and divinity. Pilate's admission of guilt, coupled with his awe of Jesus' legacy, reveals a man profoundly changed by the experience, a transformation that resonates across the pages of his letter. Perhaps the most striking aspect of Pilate's reflection is his recognition of the enduring significance of Jesus. He foresaw that the story of Jesus would not end with his crucifixion, but would grow in influence, shaping the lives of generations to come. Pilate's acknowledgement of this legacy is a testament to the universal and timeless nature of Jesus' message, a message of love, forgiveness, and hope that continues to inspire millions around the world. For modern readers, Pilate's letter serves as both a historical artifact and a spiritual reflection. It bridges the gap between the past and the present, inviting us to consider the impact of one life on the course of human history. Through Pilate's words, we are reminded of the power of conviction, the weight of moral choices, and the enduring strength of truth. As we conclude this exploration of Pilate's testimony, we are left with a poignant reminder. History is not just a series of events, but a collection of lives and decisions that shape the world we inherit. Pilate's encounter with Jesus, though brief, was transformative, a moment when the temporal intersected with the eternal, leaving behind a legacy that continues to resonate through the ages. Thank you for joining this journey through history and faith. Let this reflection inspire us to seek truth, act with courage, and embrace the transformative power of grace in our own lives.